Let's talk about visual literacy, our ability to read and make sense of images. Now, you might think its history is pretty simple, but it turns out the story we all know, well, it might be missing its very first and maybe its most fascinating chapter.
Right, so for decades, the official story has been that the term visual literacy was invented in 1969. The hero of the story is John Deebs, an educator working with Kodak. This moment, 1969, was supposedly the starting point for the entire field. It's a very neat, tidy origin story. A little too tidy, maybe.
Because what if I told you that whole origin story is off by about 30 years? What if a whole conversation about visual literacy was already happening long before 1969, basically hidden in plain sight? Well, that's the mystery we're going to unpack.
So how in the world does an entire chapter of history just get lost? The answer, it turns out, is a really common problem in how we organize knowledge. To get why this earlier history was forgotten, we first need to talk about something called academic silos.
Think of it like this. You've got researchers in art education over here having one conversation. Then you have folks in educational technology over there having a really similar one, but they never talk to each other. Their work gets trapped. And over time, ideas get forgotten, and then they get reinvented, and that is exactly what happened to visual literacy. So to break down these silos and piece the whole story back together, we're going to use a map. It's a framework laid out by researcher Ernesto Peña, and he calls them the 3 waves of visual literacy. So let's start with the one that got lost in the shuffle. Welcome to Wave 1, Consuming Images. We are going all the way back to the late 1930s. This was a time of massive change, where brand new technologies were fundamentally changing how people saw the world around them. This first wave started off pretty quietly. The term first shows up in print way back in 1939. By the 1940s, art museums, of all places, became these unlikely pioneers, messing around with the brand new, kind of weird technology of television. But by the mid-50s, TV just exploded into a mass medium, and the whole conversation shifted from the museum right into everyone's living room. So you see, the really crucial thing here is that shift in technology. The whole discussion started in the quiet, curated halls of the art museum, a place people saw as a training ground for visual skills. But then, boom, television arrives, and suddenly the conversation is all about how a massive audience is consuming images on a scale nobody had ever seen before. And this quote just nails the original thinking. This is from Robert Tyler Davis, and it's the very first time anyone ever wrote down the term visual literacy. For him, this wasn't some niche academic idea. It was an absolutely essential skill for being a good citizen in a complex world. He saw it as just as fundamental as reading and writing. Okay, let's jump ahead to the second wave. Now, this is the part of the story most people already know, the one that kicks off with John Deebs and Kodak. But now, seeing it after Wave 1, we can put it in its proper context. The big driver for this wave was a piece of tech that literally put a camera in everyone's hands, the Kodak Instamatic, which came out in 1963. All of a sudden, taking pictures was easy and cheap. This tech explosion led directly to that famous 1969 conference, and by 1972, the definition of visual literacy had officially expanded to include not just consuming images, but producing them. And this is where the script really flips. Wave 1 was all about learning to be a critical consumer of images made by other people, but Wave 2 said no, that's not enough. It argued that to be truly literate, you had to be a producer. You had to use a camera to communicate your own ideas visually. And this quote from Deebs himself just perfectly captures the spirit of the time. For this wave of thinkers, the whole concept was tied to the technology that made it possible for everyone, not just artists, to write with images. It was a total democratic revolution in how we communicate. Which brings us to Wave 3, digital meaning. This one starts bubbling up in the 80s and 90s, and it's the wave that really shaped our modern world, all driven by the personal computer and, of course, the internet. So, the tech drivers here were huge. Personal computers, graphical user interfaces that made computing visual for the first time, and then the web. This new way of thinking was really captured in this landmark 1996 paper that introduced a brand new idea, multiliteracies. I mean, the leap here is enormous. We went from creating these static physical photos to navigating and making meaning inside these dynamic, interactive digital worlds. Visual literacy wasn't just about a single picture anymore. It was about understanding entire visual systems. So the really crucial concept in Wave 3 was this semiotic turn. Scholars started to argue that, you know what, literacy isn't just about words. It's not even just about pictures. It's about how we make meaning with any system of signs, color, layout, sound, gesture, you name it. It's a much bigger, more holistic way of looking at the world.
Okay, so we've seen 3 distinct waves, right? Each one sparked by a new technology. But there's this recurring theme, this claim that gets made over and over and over again that is just wild when you see it all laid out. Watch this. Here we are in 1951, the height of Wave 1. The director of the Met Museum is declaring that thanks to new media, society has become fundamentally more visual than ever before. Sound familiar?
Now let's jump to 1972, deep in Wave 2. It is the exact same argument, but this time the technology getting all the credit is television. The television generation is supposedly just wired differently, more visually skilled than their parents.
And, you guessed it, here we are in 2005, Wave 3. It's the same claim again, only now it's digital media that's causing this great shift from word to image. It seems like every single generation believes it's living through the ultimate visual revolution.
Which, of course, brings us right here to today. Because uncovering this hidden history isn't just a fun academic exercise. It gives us a map for understanding our own moment and for asking, are we on the verge of the next big wave?
The pattern is undeniable, right? A transformative new technology comes along and it forces us to completely rethink our relationship with images and with meaning. From the museum, to the TV, to the Instamatic, to the internet, it happens every single time.
So the final question is really for all of us. With the explosion of generative AI, these tools that can create any image imaginable from a simple text prompt, are we standing at the dawn of a fourth wave? And if we are, what will visual literacy even mean when the line between consuming images, producing them, and just commanding them into existence completely disappears? That is definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me.